This is Arun Janathanan, and I'm an ad film director and a producer. I run my own production house called Jet Pictures.
My name is Anuj Nair. So I direct ads, I direct music videos, I direct corporate films, but it's primarily advertising.
I'm Rahul Vellithodi. We are mostly into digital space where we make advertisements and branded content. So I'm Rahul Vellithodi. So me and my partner, we started this company called Visual Entity. We started around 6 years back. And we are mostly into digital space where we make advertisements and branded content for brands in and around Bangalore and India and global audience. So that's what we have done mostly, and that's what we are usually into. Most of our works are advertisements for brands for their digital space. I was telling Abhishek also about it. Yeah, so we make ads for mostly brands for their digital space, basically YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, those kind of content. We do television commercials, but again, not in a full-fledged manner. Here and there we keep doing, but I think 95% of our content is for digital platform. To start with, I think I've not learned filmmaking professionally or I've done any course on that. It's just that during my so I'm a BCom graduate from Christ University, Bangalore. I took BCom with specialization in marketing. But somewhere around second or third year in BCom, and I felt maybe there's something else that I'm more into. I used to make these small edits and films for small projects at college and all that. So I joined this small diploma in cinematics and animation. There's a institute called Maya Academy of Advanced Cinematics there. So it was just like a 9 months course, and then and then there was I did not sit for the campus interview that happened. Somehow I convinced my mom and dad that somehow I can make my this animation course, and I can put it together with the marketing, and somehow I can get into advertising, which was very impractical. But they fell for it, and then I didn't sit for campus interview, and thank God for that, because today otherwise I'd be in some bank or being accountant somewhere. But yeah, so that happened, and then the more I started doing this, I kind of clearly knew that now commerce is not something that I can pursue. I don't think I have any capabilities. Somehow I passed commerce, so then I started looking for jobs totally into. So when I started as a visual effects artist. That was my specialization when I started. So at that time, I think I got offer from this company called Education First. It's a global company. They are a language training provider and they have schools all over the globe. So I joined there as an editor. I joined there as a junior visual effects artist. That was my first job. And I was there for around 3.5 years. And by the first year itself, I think I kind of so I was working with a set of editors, and then I was I was just sitting right next to them. My job was very little. Like I would work, I think 8 hours maybe in a whole week, and then the whole time I was just free. So I had lot of time to play around with, and I could just see the editors they were working all day and night. And then that's when I also fell in love with editing, because editing is something that I've been doing very early in my life. It's just that I was not doing professionally. So then I think after the second year, I asked them if I could be an editor, and then they gave me a few tests, and I did really well, and then I became an editor there. And then on, I think I've not gone back to visual effects. That really helped me in understanding a lot of things, but then I've not gone back to visual effects. It's a very complicated subject. Editing comes more naturally to me. So yeah, so then I think I started identifying myself as an editor, and I was editing for 3.5, 4 years. that's when I, like, during this time, also my mentor during my the diploma that I was taking was Ashwin. He was also part of the company, and then we both used to talk to each other. And then we had this idea, we would just go on travels, and we started shooting a lot of these travel documentaries, and we shot a documentary, and we did few very small projects for clients. And then we just wondered, like, what if we just do this and then people pay us for doing such work, like, we can travel and all such things and all that. This was, I think, early 2015, sorry, 2012, 2013, around that time. So during my stay at EF also, I mean, my last company, I was also in touch with him, and we used to do these small projects. And I think after 3.5 years there, I felt like I could do more, and I would have to just come out of that full corporate thing. And yeah, that's when I quit, and we started the company around 2015, somewhere July, I think around that time. And it was very casual in the beginning. I think we started in a small apartment. It was a one BHK apartment, sorry, 2 BHK apartment. Ashwin used to live there. My home was in Indiranagar, Bangalore. So I would just come there, work like 10 to 6, and then go back. And then it grew over a period of time. We started meeting a lot of people, a lot of producers. We started working for a lot of brands. Many people reached out to us directly. Many came through agents and middlemen. And yeah, I think it has been an amazing journey. Past 6 years, we've been doing this. And I think that was also the time that I started. I mean, I was always into filmmaking. As I said, the 3.5 years as an editor, also, I had so much of time that I learned a lot from there. But at the same time, I didn't get time to give it a full application. So that only started when I started the company, because whenever we had free time, we'd just go and do some documentaries. And we started this very small YouTube channel also called Infinite Windows, and we had decided we'll put on only the content that we really love there. I mean, not paid content by a brand. We would just randomly go for travel, or we do shoot some documentaries, and or any sort of content that excites us. And then we started putting it up there, and then it slowly started getting some traction. And then I think that was my stepping. That's how I stepped into a filmmaker's shoes. And doing this work for past 6 years, I think it's only now that we have, say, like 6-7 people to work with as editors and all that. It's just that when we started to a client, we were a big team because they would just see our website. But behind that, it's just me editing. Me and Ashwin will just go shoot, and we'll say, okay, we have editors, and we'll just go there, go back home, sit on the edit the whole day. We'll just keep on editing, do all the motion graphics. And thanks to some visual effects that we had learned, we could make a decent production value out of whatever we shot. And that gave us a lot of confidence, because we were not from a filmmaking background. We didn't do internships under directors, or we have no, even now we have no connections to the film industry or anything. It's just that over a period of time, we have found and associated, we've been associated with a few people who've been really kind to share their knowledge with us. And then that was really helpful for us to start with this. So yeah, then I think since we started making these small commercials and advertisements, there a lot of learning that happens on the set is something that is really valuable. The mistakes that you make, the things that you go wrong, and every project you feel, okay, this would be your perfect shoot, but it turns out to be maybe a nightmare. But then at that moment it's a nightmare, but then there's so much that you learn after that. There's so much you feel, okay, I could have done this. I mean, all that things happen only after the shoot. And then with every shoot, I think you improve. And I think that was a process of learning for me. As I said, there was the whole learning has been through hands-on experience. There's and obviously, like, now everything is available on internet and YouTube and all. You don't have to actually, I mean, I'm saying, like, obviously I totally appreciate like these film institutions and schools and everything, which is that in today's age and where we are now, if someone wants to be a filmmaker or anything for that matter, they can be only if they have, like, access to internet. I think there's world of knowledge there, and then they can do anything, they can learn anything out of it. So yeah, so that was the learning experience for me. And yeah, and I think that's how I got to this point where, and obviously the lockdown last year put us in a point where, I mean, luckily for us, it was not a difficult situation. We were in a pretty decent position where everyone could enjoy the lockdown, even if it lasted for like 9 months and we shut down for 9 months. It went really well for us because it was like a compulsory holiday for us. But that 9 months, 9 or 10 months, whatever it is, like it really made us think what we're doing as people. And I think that's when I also started writing these scripts for the ideas that I had in mind. And that's when I think 1 or 2 short films that we shot happened. And now the whole perspective after lockdown has changed. Now, like, what we want to do is more clear. I mean, obviously the company runs on itself. I mean, there are things that projects that happens, but at the same time, what we want to do also has to happen. Like, you can give your attention to both of them. So yeah, that's the whole priority, and that's how we got here, or I and my partner and the company. So I think to talk about the mistakes that I made as a filmmaker, I mean, to start with, I think there was this perceived notion that, like, maybe only if you have a certain knowledge from a certain school, or like, or an institution, like, so for example, like, if you have to be a good cinematographer, you have to know about the principles of cinematography, the production, all that is true in its place, and I totally agree with that. But there's something that happens on the set, like, when you actually take the camera and go out shooting. Theory and everything are in its place, but at the same time, the thing that you learn out of a hands-on experience on a set, or any kind of work that you really like, is a learning process. And like, now, I mean, on paper or on books or learning materials, they'll be like, okay, you frame this way, and you light this way, and the image will be good. But there's so much more to it. There are circumstances where none of this is possible. There's circumstances where you are, I mean, you're not capable of doing any of those stuffs, and all you can do is just point the camera in the right direction and hope you get a decent picture. Those things really makes you kind of like a bit humbled, because there are situations that are in your control, and there are situations that are not in your control. So now, worrying about like, whether this image would look good or not, the whole point is, like, you're ultimately, as a filmmaker, you're trying to tell a story. And if the story is good, and whether it's shot from whether that story is shot from a smartphone, or a high-end Alexa film camera, it does not matter. People would still watch it if the story is good. And it took a while for us to understand this. Like, we only thought, like, good film can be made out of expensive cameras, or with a huge crew. You might have to have a producer, you might have to have an assistant director. But to a great extent, it is not true. I mean, that's what I believe. Everyone has their own perspective. I feel if you have a good story to tell, and you are very clear, and you take a very simplified, straight, direct approach, I think it's much easier to get it to where you are, because ultimately you're telling a story. It's as easy as a granny telling their kid a story, right? That is like, she does not use lighting or cinematography or principles of direction. You're just so she's not like learned from a film school, right, how to tell those stories. She just tells you, and then you find it really interesting, and she tells it in the most simplest way. And I think that is the approach that right now I'm trying to get to, because I feel like if I have a story in my mind, my thing is like, how do I convey that story to the audience in the simplest fashion? uh, of course, the knowledge that I've learned in terms of as a cinematographer and as a post-production artist, as an editor, all comes into play. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying the easiest step to start filmmaking is go out there. And I mean, if you have a smartphone, start with a smartphone. If you have a decent DSLR, start with DSLR, but start, because once you start that, you would actually know the problems that are there, like, to tell your story. I mean, even if it's a very simple story, you would understand what are the problems, and ultimately it all comes to uh, the quality of the story that you have to tell and the people emoting those stories. I feel those are the two important things that, I mean, to what I have understood, that really makes a difference, like, the characters in your story. Once that is sorted, then it's just the process next is obviously, how do I make it look good? How do I light it better? How do I have a better location? That is the learning that you'll have later. Maybe one person would not be able to manage as a director. That's why you might need an assistant director. You might fall short of funds. You might need a producer. You might need a line producer to arrange things. You would get there in time, but to think about all that before you even start is just not uh, a good way, because I mean, might work for a lot of people, but then to most of us, I think the easiest way to start is just find in your mind the story that you have to tell, and then find the easiest way to tell that story. Once we do that, the next process would get even better, and the next every process will also, you'll make hundreds of mistakes, but those things will only make it better. You would try to avoid those things the next time. Yeah, and I think that is a crude way of saying, like, how to approach filmmaking in my perspective. I mean, again, it depends from people to people. Now, for me, when I started, technical aspects were a big issue, because obviously, as I said, like, we wanted to know more about cameras, and more about the like, the principles of lighting, direction, all these things. But again, um, now, I mean, for example, I think now if you just look back to the best films that you have seen, okay, and you just think about what you really appreciated about that movie. I'm not talking from a filmmaker's perspective. I'm just talking about maybe when you were a kid, or from a regular audience. Like, if I speak to my mom and I ask her what did she like about that movie, my mom would tell, okay, the direction was good, or cinematography was good. And this is something that I'm telling you from a mass perspective, right? Again, it depends on how you are as a filmmaker. Now, some filmmakers would really want their films to be a critically acclaimed film, right? And there are filmmakers who produces, I mean, that's in our industry also. There are filmmakers who make films for a mass audience. And there are filmmakers who have movies that meets both um, demands. Like, their movies are critically acclaimed, at the same time there's a huge following for their films. So it's just that you choose your spot, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. Ultimately, you're in an entertainment industry. You're telling the story. There's no right way of telling the story. There's only ways of telling the story. Uh, and I think it's just all this technical knowledge and learning helps, but again, I don't feel it is a part of like, I mean I don't think it is something that you can't do without. You can always, as I said, like, once you start being a filmmaker, or once you shoot whatever story that you have in your mind, the next step, you know what you lack, and then you know if it's something that you can bring it. If you can't bring it, then obviously you'll associate with someone who does. And that's why there are films where the director itself is a cinematographer, and there are times where the director just wants to focus on the direction, and then that's when he hires a cinematographer. And like that, you kind of associate with multiple peoples, right? I mean, for example, like today, the way Malayalam industry is doing, in my mind, I think it's a very simplistic approach. Like, they're approaching films in a very, and I think that's why I also started kind of leaning towards that kind of industry, because I feel like the story that has to be told is done without a lot of like, the glamour and glitz and all that. Like, if a home is shown to be a middle class home, now there are two approaches. You can actually make a set, make it look like a middle middle class home, or you can actually go to a middle class home that'll have its own problems shooting in a middle class home, or in a set where which is a more controlled environment that'll have its own problems. But both approaches are right. I mean, there's nothing right or wrong there. And maybe in one you'll have more production value, maybe in the other you don't have more production value. But the point I'm trying to make is, it's not about the direction or cinematography. It's just your preference on what you want. If I want to or if I want to be a filmmaker who appeals to a audience, or just want to reach to a lot of audience who really appreciate a good storytelling, actually I don't have to think about it. I can even shoot a film on a phone and it'll be, if it's a good story, it'll be appreciated by people. At the same time, if I'm someone who really wishes to, like, earn Oscars and Filmfare awards and being critically acclaimed, every point in my movie will be where every point in the movie will be judged based on editing, cinematography, direction, then I think that is the kind of approach that I'll take. I'll try to be as good as a director or a cinematographer, and anything else that I'm not good at, I'll associate with people who are good at those things. And then I'll make a film which I feel maybe I don't want, even if it doesn't reach a lot of people, I'm fine. But if it's like really, I mean, critics and people who know about this stuff, they really appreciate, okay, and if that draws me happiness, then I'll do that. So it's just, I think it's just the path that you choose. I mean, now you have a lot of YouTubers who just started with a smartphone, and then maybe now they are in movies, and they do a lot of stuff that they wouldn't have even thought of doing, right? And if you just think, if they from the beginning, if they always thought, okay, maybe one day I'll have a cinema camera and then I'll make this short video that might reach a lot of people, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Just because they felt, okay, whatever I have right now, I'll just do with that, and which may or may not reach people. And then I think the next process is, okay, the next one would be much better. And I think that is the process that I feel makes sense to me. I mean, again, it's everyone's preferences. So I think as a director, I mean, I just always thank myself that there is some sort of technical knowledge that I acquired from my past, and that really helped me as a filmmaker. I know that that might not be a luxury for most of the people, but still, I think the easiest way to start any journey, for that matter, is just start wherever you are with whatever you have, instead of waiting for someone to just suddenly come and say, okay, here's your $100 million and just make this movie for me. I may happen, but yeah, very rare. So now to start with, the filmmaking as a career itself is not something that, I mean, a lot of people take. And I think there's I mean, many people have a lot of issues also with it, because it is not a guaranteed avenue for a lot of people, right? Like, where you are, I mean, for sure you'll hit success. It maybe for some it's years of struggle, maybe for some it is it takes less time, but it depends from people to people. Now, filmmaking itself is something that I feel is a very it's a path that doesn't have a direct, I mean, you'll never find tons of people having a same opinion about one thing. I mean, that is, I think, for any creative field, for that matter. And since it is like that, and for that matter, any creative field, whatever you do will always have people who appreciate and people who don't appreciate. People who really find sense in your work and people who don't find sense in your work. So there is, I mean, like, it just the point where you figure out what you want to listen to and what you don't want to listen to. Just as maybe the to start with, just this your first step of getting into filmmaking, maybe the first step that maybe you decided that you want to be a filmmaker, maybe at that point itself you would have heard a lot of critiques, and maybe your parents, your friends, about how risky that field is and how difficult it is to survive there, and everything about it, right? So, but you still take that decision. I mean, like, because you in your heart you feel that maybe it is, maybe you might have to go with for years of pain, but maybe you still feel that maybe you can do something good with it. Now, for example, uh, what when I came to this, I know I feel really jealous about these new kids who have figured it out from the beginning itself. Like they have this thing in their mind, okay, I'll be a filmmaker and all that. Actually, I think up till my college, I had no idea what I will be. I had no idea because I had no idea what I want to do. I mean, everyone loves films, everyone loves songs, everyone. It's a very fancy field, right? So uh, there was nothing new about it. Like even I love films and all that. It's just that at one point when I started maybe as an editor and I started seeing how the process is up close, I somehow felt that I can do this. Like I know like there's a lot of things associated with it, but I felt like I can do this. Like it is not that difficult. And easiest thing for me to for it to happen was not telling this to a lot of people, but just believing that by myself. Because I was sure that if I tell it to some people, because the same thing used to happen. Like we used to have these lectures and classes about directing and filmmaking and all that, and then they would show some works. I mean, from directors and everything, and I mean, uh, and you'd watch those films, and they will try to find some sense out of maybe why he shot that scene or why that scene was done that way. But for me, that was a very simple approach. For me, that was maybe he put a lot of thought into making that scene, but for me, that was just conveying that story first and then doing all that. So I always found a more simplified approach to most of the things, and I always felt, okay, he put a lot of this thing, but I think I can do this. Now, if I shout it out loud there, people would just consider me that, okay, hey, too much of attitude and all that. And that kind of helps because I know what I want to get into. And I would maybe find the people who kind of agree with me on that. I'm not saying like there are some people you can't do without. Like obviously, like when I make that decision, I have to tell my mom, I have to tell my dad, and everyone around me. And whether they agree or not is secondary. It's just that what you decided on, right? So them saying no is okay because since childhood we have heard a lot of no's from there, so it's fine to hear no from them. But then I understand that when there are people are in and around you, sometimes there are situations where you hear more no's than yes, and it's very discouraging, and it's very difficult for you to take that. But the whole point is, um, all that matters is, I mean, now that you've already taken the decision that you want to be a filmmaker, just that journey has come through a lot of no's, but you made that decision, right? uh, Going forward, it can only get more complex because now you'll find more such people. Till now, there was a group of people who was not into filmmaking. Now you have more filmmakers, more uh, an industry which is still struggling, and more the more you interact with people, the more you'll hear on how stupid your ideas would be, or how stupid your script is, or how not doable or impossible the work is. But then I think it's just that you just have to make up your mind and just figure out, as I said, the simplest approach to movie. Like if you think the script is complicated, then simplify it. Make sure your core remains the same. Make sure your story is unchanged, but at the same time, I feel every movie can be done at every budget level or any uh, production value. So uh, there will be people, and I mean, it's very weird that I have to explain it to people, because even now it's very difficult to. I mean, as a filmmaker, even now we find such problems, right? Where how do we handle rejection? I mean, even that is something that even we deal with on a daily basis. And I'm sure, like a lot of filmmakers who might be veterans in that, even they would do. There's nothing new about it. It's just that you have to make up your mind and just go ahead with it. Don't give ears to people or naysayers. If you really feel that your work is good, if you really feel that what you're doing makes sense to you, it's okay. That is good enough for you. And one day you'll find the audience who like it might take a while, but you will find your audience who loves the work that you're doing. And once you do that, I think then on, I think you will start giving ears to people who really appreciate, and maybe just go deaf to people who don't. I think that's the simplest approach that I can tell people. Just keep on happening, and don't give ears to people who are like, you know, not supporting or very critical about the stuff. Like, obviously, if you give your film to a critic, you're giving it to a critic, right? I mean, you can't expect him to just say good things about you. Like, even now, critics exist only to talk what went wrong more in a film than what went right in a film, because that's the job of a critic. I mean, I don't think there's a degree for that, but just like, they're just filmmakers who know every nook and aspect of a filmmaking process, and they just wait to see a thing, and they just wait for where things can go wrong. Obviously, if your work is so fine and so good, you would be appreciated, and that might take maybe few months, years, it might take forever, but then you will reach there, I think, and that'll happen for you. So I think the best advice is not give ears to people. If you really believe in your stuff, just go ahead with it, and I think that's the easiest approach that I can suggest. Okay, so we work with brands like Amazon, Titan. We work with ITC. We work with like, currently we work with Aramco Cements. We're working with Cult Fitness, Healthify Me, some schools like School of India. We work with Centurion. We work with CMR universities. Yeah, like, and then like, there are some big projects that happen with them, there's some small projects that happens with them. So, and there are some people who we regularly work with. So yeah, things like that keeps on happening. And then we have clients like who directly reach to us from abroad, like, you know, maybe I think that all credit goes to my partner Ashwin for that. He has made our decent SEO, and some of the works that we have put up outside, maybe we get a lot of inquiries from outside the country, where if their film crew is not able to come to India and shoot, we do the shooting for them, and we just send them the raw footage, or we just do the whole shoot. We do the project. Like, I think we had done quite a few projects last year for Indeed, that came from Australia or somewhere, I think that. And then there's Welcome Trust. We did scientific on project on superbugs and all that. And I think, yeah, so some projects we get from abroad, because I think they see our website and they really like the quality that we're producing. So they find scope in us, and then they reach to us through that. Hey, thank you so much. Bye-bye.